Today, I'm going to be sharing 10 of the best practices that you can apply every single day to make a positive impact on your mental health and well-being. And stick around till the end because I'll be sharing a bonus tip, which is something that had the biggest impact on my own depression and anxiety a few years back. So, here comes the introduction, and then let's talk about mental health. Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Let's Talk About Mental Health. I'm Jeremy Godwin. Thank you for joining me. Every week on my podcast and here on YouTube, I talk about simple ideas for better mental health and well-being. So today, I'm sharing 10 simple things that you can build into your daily routine that, if you repeat them every single day, will have a positive effect on your mental health in the long term. So let's start with tip number 1, which is wake up at the same time every day and go to sleep at the same time every day. Look, I know this one is probably a really boring way to start, especially when, you get to the weekend and when it's not lockdown 83, you probably want to go out and have fun. But the reality is that having a stable routine is one of the biggest things that can have a positive effect on your mental health and well-being. We have these systems that are designed to work on routines based on our circadian rhythms, which is our internal body clock. Now, whether you're a morning person or an evening person really doesn't matter, but it's about finding the rhythm and the routine that works well for you. For me personally, I get up at the exact same time every single morning, 7 days a week, and I go to bed at the same time 7 days a week. I know, I sound like a nana, but the thing is that we all need a decent night's sleep and we all need regular routine. And that for me has been a big thing that's helped me with dealing with depression and anxiety. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is daily gratitude practice. And this is something that I talked about back in episode 46 of the podcast, which I'll link to down in the description if you'd like to explore this further. But in a nutshell, just a few minutes every single morning to write down 3 to 5 things that you are really grateful for and to focus on feeling that gratitude can have such a positive effect on your overall well-being. Because what it does is it starts the day off with you thinking about the stuff that you are grateful for and that you feel positive about. And the more that you focus on stuff that you feel positive about, funnily enough, the more that you find over time to feel positive about. And the more you feel positive about, the more positive stuff that you attract to you. It's like a circle of love. So take a couple of minutes every day and focus on a few things that you feel grateful for. Tip number 3 is to set your intentions for the day. Now, I take a couple of minutes each morning. I don't make a big deal out of this, and I don't think that it needs to be a big deal. But what I do is I think about what are the 3 to 5 things that I need to achieve today. And half the time that could just be as simple as do the groceries. It generally involves record one of these or write an episode for the podcast or whatever it is. But I try not to let my intentions of my activities that I need to do go beyond just a couple of things a day, because when you have a to-do list this long, you end up making life way more difficult for yourself. But the other part of that is to actually set some intentions around your feelings for the day. So I do something with my partner every morning where we talk about in the car, without even realizing that we're doing it, we talk about having a good day, and we talk about, even if we're finding ourselves feeling a little bit crappy in the morning, actually saying today is going to be a good day. And that's a form of intention setting. I don't think that you should go down the path of toxic positivity. I don't think that you have to be happy and smiley if you're feeling really shit inside. But by actually choosing to say, even if I have a bit of a challenge today, even if I have a bit of a bad day, I am going to choose to be as positive and optimistic as I realistically can, and I'm going to choose to see the best in things that I possibly can. The choice with that is, of course, yours. Tip number 4 is to each morning spend a few minutes just with yourself in quiet contemplation with a tea or coffee. This is about saying, make some time and space for yourself just to consciously ease into the day. I generally find that having a coffee while I'm setting my intentions for the day is a really nice way of just spending the time that I need to spend getting myself prepared. And it's only like 5 or 10 minutes of the day, but it's very much about easing myself into the day and having a little space that is just for me. Tip number 5 is to focus on the bigger picture throughout the day. I think it's really important to be clear on what actually matters to you throughout the course of the day. And sometimes we get so hung up on the little things that happen, the photocopier's out of toner, or somebody flogged our pencil case, or whatever happened, but we forget to actually say, hang on a second, is this going to matter in 5 weeks, 5 years, 5 months, whatever? Most of the stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis, I hate to break this to you, it really doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. So, you get stuck in traffic for 5 minutes. Are you really going to remember that in 5 years' time? Does it actually matter? No. A lot of what we react to are just reactions to things that piss us off in the moment. And so rather than focusing on that stuff, take a step back and remind yourself of what actually does matter. And that leads me into my next point, tip number 6, which is prioritize. So the thing is that we all have lots of stuff that needs to be done throughout the course of the day, but you know what? There's only so many hours in the day. So rather than trying to be all things to everyone and get everything done, prioritize. And that comes back to focusing on what are the 3 to 5 things that genuinely matter to be achieved in the course of the day, and preferably no more, because if you try to do more than that, you will find that you're less effective. You'll be much more effective if you work at a moderate pace on a small number of things that are aligned to your bigger term priorities, rather than trying to work on everything at once at a frantic pace. Because when you're trying to do that, you end up achieving very little. If you need to say no to things, say no. In fact, that's something I covered back in episode 45 of the podcast. Let's talk about assertiveness, and you may find that to be helpful as well. Tip number 7 is to spend 5 minutes a day practicing some simple mindfulness, especially if you feel stressed or overwhelmed. The thing about mindfulness is it gets kicked around a lot as being the solution to everything. And there are some really complicated practices and there are ridiculously overpriced apps out there. It doesn't need to be overly complicated. Simply spending 5 minutes a day to just stop, pay attention to what's going on around you and within you, and to mindfully observe the current moment can help to center you, relax you, and just refocus you and re-energize you. This is something I talked about at length in episode 42, Let's Talk About Mindfulness. And in that podcast episode, I actually explored in a lot more detail how to tackle a bit of mindfulness, but also I actually went through a couple of examples. So if you're interested, check the podcast out. Tip number 8 is to make healthy choices. The food, drink, exercise, TV, conversations, news, relationships, and interactions, all of those things that you consume, what you put into your mind, body, and spirit will have a direct effect on your overall well-being, whether you realize it or not. And your choices are your choice. That's something I talked about back in episode 50, Let's Talk About Choice, and you may find that helpful as well. But, realistically, if you're going to watch trash TV or eat trash, and, I'm not innocent with that. I've got a little bit of an issue I'm dealing with around emotional eating. But, if you're going to consume trash, you're going to feel like trash. So it's about saying what goes in will have a direct effect on what I feel. So start to look at those choices that you are making. Tip number 9 is let go of anger. Holding on to anger is bad juju, and that shit will eat away at your soul if you let it fester. So let it go. For your own sake, deal with your emotions and release them. Don't cling on to them. Don't be angry with someone for days and weeks and months, because those things will end up making you angry at yourself in the long run as well. These are things that I've explored in a few episodes of the podcast. Let's Talk About Feelings, episode 28. Let's Talk About Emotions, episode 57. And Letting Go, episode 32. And tip number 10 is to finish your day with a few minutes of reflection. One of the things I talk about a lot is that if we don't learn, then we don't grow. And what I like to do each night is spend just a couple of minutes as I'm getting ready for bed to quietly reflect on the day and consider without judgment one or two of the key lessons that I learned during the day. I know that sounds really, intellectual and whatever, but it's actually not. It's just a case of saying, all right, well, the big things that happened today were this, this, and this. What did I actually learn from that? What am I going to do more of next time? What am I going to stop doing? What am I going to do differently for a different result? This isn't about judging what happens because, the past has passed. There's no point judging it. What you need to do is focus on learning from your experiences, because when you learn and you apply those lessons, that's when you grow and that's when you become a better version of yourself. You might also find episode 37 of the podcast, Let's Talk About Growth, and episode 12, Let's Talk About Reflection, to be particularly helpful. And I promised you a bonus tip, and here it is. I talked about healthy choices earlier on, and expanding on that, the biggest thing that I did that had a massive impact on my depression and anxiety was that in July 2018, I quit drinking completely. Since then, I haven't had a drop. And I'm sorry to be boring about this, but alcohol is a poison. And that means that when you drink, you are actually consuming poison. So maybe it's just me, but if unhealthy choices lead to unhealthy outcomes, then it kind of makes perfect sense that drinking or anything like that is actually one of the worst things that you can possibly do to yourself. Look, everyone has to make their own choices, and I'm not saying don't drink, because that is only for you to decide and nobody else. But if you look at it in terms of common sense, you'll probably start to realize that there are smarter choices that you can make in life. For me, my anxiety and depression was so bad that quitting drinking was really, it became an absolute necessity because I was using it to self-medicate. And so for me, it became the single biggest thing that I did that finally sorted out my depression and helped me to better manage my anxiety on a day-to-day basis. And if you'd like more simple ideas for better mental health, then check out the weekly Let's Talk About Mental Health podcast. In the latest episode 67, I'm looking at what energy is, why it matters for good mental health, and how to work with your energy and other people's energy to improve your mental health and well-being. Thanks so much for joining me this week, and I hope to see you again next time. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time.